Hi, everyone. My name is Sabrina. My group members are Donna, Erica, Brianna, and Sean. And today we're going to be discussing the reading Women Tweet on Violence from hashtag Yes All Women to hashtag Me Too. In our presentation, we're going to start off by discussing one of the main themes found in our reading, gendered or gender-based violence, and what roles media can play within it. We're going to go over specific examples from the reading and then show two of our own media examples and then have a class discussion. I also just wanted to start off by including a trigger/content warning. We'll be discussing topics that involve violence and sexual assault. Okay, so one of the main concepts in our reading is gendered violence. The United Nations defines violence against women as any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. I also included some statistics from the Canadian Women's Foundation, which include 67% of Canadians know a woman who has experienced physical or sexual abuse. Indigenous women are killed at 6 times the rate of non-Indigenous women, and 6,000 plus women and children sleep in shelters on any given night because it isn't safe at home. So what does sexual violence entail? The pyramid of sexual violence is a tool developed by anti-sexual violence educators to help make the connection between different forms of sexual violence more clear. It starts with attitudes and beliefs at the foundation and leads to things such as the normalization of violence, removal of autonomy, and physical expressions of violence. And at the very bottom, you can see they're rooted in systems such as racism, colonialism, sexism, homophobia, and ableism. Gender-based violence disproportionately affects women and girls, is systemic, and deeply entrenched in institutions, cultures, and traditions. What we find as sexual violence is rooted in power, control, and entitlement. So how is media related? So found in the reading, women have used technology to create and sustain narratives that demand attention and redress for gendered violence. They bring up examples from the earliest feminist press to present day Twitter, and they argue that movements such as hashtag #MeToo was made by the digital labor, consciousness raising, and alternative storytelling created through previous hashtag networks, some of which we will be discussing today. The reading found that feminist hashtags have been successful in creating an easy to digest shorthand that challenges and changes mainstream narratives about violence and victimhood. For example, the misunderstanding that violence is an individual problem for both perpetrators and victims. They clarify that misunderstanding by saying that the personal is political. And lastly, research found that these networks offered cathartic release, built solidarity, and made consequential demands on a still violently patriarchal society. And we're going to see that through the use of Twitter hashtags. Next is Sean.
Thank you, Sabrina. So as Sabrina mentioned, the reading by Bailey covers numerous hashtags to help give context to the concepts and themes found within the reading. I'm going to be covering 2 of those examples right now. And if you want to read more on these examples or read the other examples, you can refer to the reading to do so. So the first example is the hashtag Yes All Women. This hashtag was an early hashtag on the topic of violence towards women and served as a bit of a building block, but I'll touch on that more after I explain the hashtag and its origins. So in May of 2014, Elliot Rodger murdered several women on the University of California at Santa Barbara campus. The murders were spurred by Rodgers' disdain towards women who would not date him, as well as women who date men of color. So obviously the key point there is he was targeting women for a variety of reasons. And of course, these acts and murders caused national discussions and debates around men's entitlement and violence towards women. Unfortunately, these discussions spurred the creation of a hashtag not all men, created by men who felt victimized by the discussions around violence towards women by men. Of course, that kind of moves away from the important discussions around how women experience and fear violence by men. on an everyday basis. And so to counter that hashtag, women started to tweet out the hashtag yes all women as a way to not only recenter the discussion back to where it should be on violence towards women, but to also raise awareness that this does happen every single day and women experience this every single day. So this hashtag gained massive popularity. It was shared and viewed by millions of people on social media. And so that's kind of why it became a bit of a building block for future hashtags on social media and social media campaigns. So moving on to the second example covered in the reading. This example is a hashtag, the empty chair. So I'll give a bit of context to this hashtag and then we'll discuss it a little further. So in July of 2015, the cover of the New York Magazine featured 23 women who had come forward to detail the abuse and assault by actor Bill Cosby. The 23 women were each sitting in the same chair with one empty chair to signify the 11 women who also accused Cosby but did not want to share their identities. So you can see on the screen here is the cover of that magazine that I just covered. So this was an interesting one. It actually spurred a male feminist ally, comedian and journalist by the name of Elon James White, to create a hashtag, the hashtag the empty chair. And the goal of the hashtag was to not only bring awareness to the fact that there are many women out there who are fearful to share their experiences and their stories out of fear of the repercussions that may come along with that, but also to just share stories specifically from women who are worried and scared to share their identity. So it was short-lived. It didn't last too long, but White used the hashtag again to share many stories that women experience on the topic of sexual violence and general violence towards women. And yeah, it was a great one to really bring attention to the topic of violence towards women. And this was an interesting one because, in contrast to the last hashtag, yes all women, or more specifically the hashtag not all men, men felt victimized by the discussions around violence towards women by men, and they felt like they needed to center the spotlight around them in that story. But in this one, it was actually a man who wanted to use this hashtag and social media campaign to empower women and to bring light to these stories. So now I'll pass it over to Erica.
Thanks, Sean. So after discussing some examples from the assigned reading, we thought it'd be really interesting to discuss a very similar example that wasn't mentioned in the reading, but definitely could have been, and particularly one that came from before hashtag feminism was really popularized. So this example is the Everyday Sexism Project, which started out as a blog in 2012 before the era of hashtag feminism. It was created by Laura Bates in 2012, who's a woman who was trying to showcase everyday occurrences of sexism in the UK. Its purpose was to allow women to submit posts to the blog about any form of sexism they experienced in a day, no matter how small and insignificant they may seem or how big and scary that they were. It was an attempt to show how normalized sexism is and how it is ingrained into our society and way of thinking. The blog is really to show women that you aren't being overdramatic or you shouldn't just let it go, because women all over the world are experiencing similar acts of sexism, and it shouldn't just be how society works. This blog wants to get people talking about sexism so that it cannot be ignored any longer. When the blog was taken to Twitter, turned into a hashtag, and officially became a part of hashtag feminism, it was unstoppable. There are thousands of tweets under the hashtag, and it's definitely a notable project that easily could have been mentioned in the assigned reading, as it is just as successful as others mentioned. A concept that this blog turned hashtag and the hashtags mentioned in the reading have in common is the solidarity of women. While different hashtags may focus on different varieties of sexism and inequality, one could say that the main purpose of them is to show women that they are not alone. This blog is an easy way for women to browse through others' experiences in up to 25 different countries. It showcases that experiencing sexism and sexual harassment doesn't have to feel so lonely, and that it is a globalized experience. Now I want to show you a short clip from a TEDx talk that Laura gave at Oxford University, which specifically focuses on entries to the Everyday Sexism Project that were focused on sexism on university campuses. So this is just one example of something seemingly so minor that someone felt the need to share. And as they should, considering it is, of course, sexism in its finest. Laura later goes on in the talk to explain how whenever she gives these talks, she has people coming up to her explaining how they didn't actually know that so many of these acts were considered sexism or sexual harassment in the first place. This is exactly why Laura started her blog so many years ago, to show people that sexism is incredibly normalized in society, but it doesn't have to be if we start talking about it and start fighting against it. The more people share their stories about everyday sexism, the more other people realize they don't need to put up with it. This blog is clearly a precursor of #feminism, considering how well it actually became a hashtag once social media activism really started to pick up. This is a great example of #feminism that has really opened up the conversation and done what it was intended to do, which is to showcase how normalized sexism is in society. So now I'll pass it on to Dana to talk about Me Too.
Thank you, Erica. Oh, thank you, Erica. So I wanted to introduce the #MeToo, which is the tipping point of visibility. The Me Too movement is unique due to its prior status as an activist campaign before it was a hashtag. Sexual assault activist Tarana Burke started #MeToo in 2007 through her nonprofit Just Be Incorporated to provide women and girls with the opportunity to connect with other survivors and have access to the support they need. However, on October 15th, 2017, actress Alyssa Milano responded to the growing stories about sexual violence that was sparked by actresses coming forward about producer Harvey Weinstein's serial predatory behavior. Milano tweeted, "If you've been sexually harassed or assaulted, write Me Too" as a reply to this tweet. Her tweet received over 50,000 likes. The #MeToo movement had been legitimized by Milano due to her fame, wealth, and popularity status in Hollywood. Her status encouraged other individuals with the same status to take the Me Too movement legitimately. For example, Black women were speaking up about Cosby's sexual violence for decades. However, their voices were not heard. It wasn't until another Black male comedian, Hannibal Buress, called Cosby a rapist during a 2014 stand-up show that many mainstream media featured. The difference between #TheEmptyChair and the #MeToo movement is Milano's reintroduction of hashtags as a successful vehicle for movement building. Additionally, Milano and other celebrities have the significantly larger numbers of followers on Twitter and other social media platforms, which have aided in legitimizing Me Too. Elon James White's 2015 act of solidarity with the #TheEmptyChairs exposes the reality first laid bare by the response to Buress, that the Black men who were seen as Cosby's in-group and who carried the benefits of credentialed masculinity were able to propel the conversation forward in ways that women previously could not. Similarly, Alyssa Milano, a wealthy, famous white woman, was able to garner a level of attention for #MeToo that none other hashtag received. The similarity between #MeToo and the #EmptyChair stems from creating a safe community that alleviates the risk and fear associated with coming forward. Both Elon James White and Alyssa Milano used their platform to share the voices of women who were previously not heard. They also were partners with Tarana Burke and other women of color to organize a new campaign using the #TimesUp, putting men and other perpetrators on notice that the time is up on their silence, shrouding their abusive behaviors. Furthermore, Me Too has gained its power due to Alyssa Milano's presence and support and was legitimized as a powerful hashtag because of the significantly larger scholarly and media attention it's received. However, that's not the only case, as #MeToo had been possible due to its predecessor hashtags and the digital labor and conscious raising work done by the previous organizations, such as #YesAllWomen, #SurvivorPrivilege, #WhyIStayed, and #TheEmptyChairs, and many more other hashtags that created conversations of gendered violence. And so now we're gonna move over to Brianna.
Another media example that relates to the core concepts of the #MeToo movement is the Netflix TV show 13 Reasons Why. 13 Reasons Why covers storylines surrounding the topic of sexual assault, as the show showcases victims and survivors, as well as the nature of rapist characters. The beginning seasons of the show follow a storyline of high school student Hannah Baker, who tragically commits suicide. Leading up to her death, Hannah leaves tapes with each one explaining why a certain person or event caused her to take her own life. In the 12th tape, Hannah explains the traumatizing details of her rape by a classmate, Bryce Walker. Bryce Walker is a character in the series who is a privileged white serial rapist. Hannah explains that this character forcefully raped her while she was alone with him in a hot tub at his house during a party. Therefore, this rape contributed to the cause of her suicide. Once this information was released through the tapes being shared, this caused another female character, Jessica, to reconsider and remember a similar situation that she went through with Bryce Walker as well. On a night where alcohol was a factor, Bryce brutally raped Jessica as she was half unconscious on her bed. Since Jessica was intoxicated, she does not remember her assault, but learns about it and has flashbacks after some time has passed. Jessica then turns to unhealthy coping mechanisms, such as drinking on a daily basis, as she keeps the story of her assault to herself without speaking on it. Eventually, Jessica musters up the courage to speak on her experience and take action as she realizes she's not the only person who has suffered through an assault. Through the strength she possessed by speaking out, she was surrounded and welcomed by other survivors and allies. With the support system she gained, she created a group called Hands Off Our Bodies, which granted a safe space for allies and those who have also had experienced sexual assault. The clip I'm about to show shows Jessica during an assembly doing a speech on the horrific reoccurring pattern of sexual assault that happens throughout her school. She ends off her speech by saying, "I am a survivor," which then triggers a reaction amongst other student survivors to stand up and also say, "I am a survivor." One of the students who stands up in the assembly is Tyler, who is a character who is a victim of rape, but had not publicly come forward about the incident besides with a few close friends. By him seeing those around him confidently say, "I'm a survivor," this then helped him gain the strength he needed to move forward from a vulnerable position he was in. This scene represents what the #MeToo movement is all about. It represents how common sexual assault actually is and shows that no one has to suffer alone.
So now we're just going to do a class discussion, and we'll move on to Sabrina to do the conclusion.
So gendered violence is an issue faced throughout the world. Gender-based violence disproportionately affects women and girls, is systemic, and is deeply entrenched in institutions, cultures, and traditions. And just like other concepts learned in our course, sexual violence is rooted in power, control, and entitlements. As we've seen so far, media technologies can be used for good to spread awareness and create communities of support, as saw through examples of hashtags, blogs, and television. However, we should still be critical of media and the role it plays when portraying gendered violence. Thank you.